Hello and welcome to today's European SharePoint, Office 365 and Azure Community webinar, the 7th of a series of 8 webinars for SharePoint Week. My name is Laura and I'm delighted to be joined by David Ramallo, who will present the topic Transforming SharePoint Forms with SPFx, How to Start. Remember to join in on the conversation about today's webinar and more on Twitter. Our Twitter handle is @EuropeanSP and our hashtag is ESPC23. Don't forget to check out the Resource Centre. This is updated daily with the latest blogs, ebooks, webinars and how-to videos. Simply visit SharePointEurope.com and click the Content tab at the top. Continue your learning by joining us for our next webinar, which is the final webinar for SharePoint Week. Using OpenAI API in SharePoint Framework projects. This webinar takes place tomorrow, Thursday, the 11th of May from 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. From 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. CEST. You can find out more details at SharePointEurope.com/SharePoint Week. The ESPC program is now available. The ESPC 23 program has the most relevant topics being presented by experienced and exciting speakers in the Microsoft 365 and Azure space. Across 4 days, there will be over 100 world-class speakers, 120 sessions, great networking, connections, parties, great food, a beautiful and accessible capital city, and much more. Prepare to hear the very latest on Microsoft Teams, Microsoft Viva, Copilot, Search, AI, DevOps, SPFx, and not forgetting the all-important Azure and security sessions. Further sessions will be added to the program throughout the year to ensure that we have the latest and most relevant sessions post-Ignite 2023. We hope that you will all find something on this program that could have a positive impact, whether that be on your learning, your connections, your career, or your customers. So be sure to get your tickets now and lock in the best price possible. To find out more, you can visit SharePointEurope.com/conference/schedule/2023 to view the full conference program. The early bird sale for this year's European Power Platform Conference ends tomorrow. We are now sold out of 3-day tickets for the European Power Platform Conference 2023, but you can still get your hands on some 2-day tickets while they are still available. The European Power Platform Conference dives into Microsoft's Power Platform stack and provides a host of professional development opportunities, including 3 inspirational keynotes, 6 expert full-day tutorials, and over 85 specialist sessions delivered by global Power Platform experts and Microsoft corporate and community leaders. Gain expert insight and hear the latest innovations across Power Apps, Power BI, Power Automate, Power Virtual Agents, and Power Pages. Be sure to visit SharePointEurope.com/European-Power-Platform-Conference-Pricing to grab your tickets while they're still available at this amazing price. So after the webinar, we will have a questions and answers session, but David has also kindly offered to answer some questions as they come through. So type any questions that you might have into the questions window and questions will be selected and answered as they come through. This webinar will also be recorded and added to the Resource Centre where you will be notified by email when it is available. And now I'm going to pass over to our webinar presenter today. Hello, David.
Hello, everyone. Thank you. All right, let me share my screen. I think it's going through now. So everyone should see like my main screen saying basically the topic of today, which is transforming SharePoint forms with SPFx, how to start. So just a quick overview about it. Previously, we just had Power Automate to build forms on SharePoint and also list views. And this is the most recent edition in terms of forms and how can you customize all of them. Obviously, previously, the way that we have done this is probably have a web part, but with this, it'll be more intuitive for the users because you can still use all the functionalities of the lists. For instance, edit quick grid, some stuff like that, and also adding this new part where you can connect with any service using a SharePoint framework. And if you are familiar with that, could be faster in terms of development and deployment and all of that. So a bit about me. So my name is David Ramalho. I work as a senior SharePoint developer at Storm Technology. I am from Portugal, the north of Portugal, nearby Porto. I also have my own blog, SharePoint/tricks.com. If you want to have like any question or something like that, I don't know if you are interested to learn what I generally share, you can always go there and check. The areas that I work the most are definitely SharePoint, Microsoft Teams, and also Power Platform. Even though this one, the last one, I'm there, but not as often as SharePoint and Teams. So what we're going to speak about on this session is pretty much what is SharePoint Framework. I bet most people already know what it is, but it's always good to remember what is. And then we're going to specify the current options that we have available, and they are quite a few because when it started, we only had web parts, and now we have a few more other options. I have one screenshot that I took from the PNP community calls where I have everything except this new one that they are releasing it. So we're going to have this as well. Then we're going to need to know what system requirements. So basically which SharePoint framework version you need in order to do this. Then also all the node packages and all of that. Then SharePoint from form 0 to hero, basically how can you start. Then you have the important nodes, which going to be something like, okay, how I gold serve, how I'm going to deploy all of that as well. It's very important. And there are a few differences between deployment of this particular SharePoint solution compared with web parts where you just drag and drop. And lastly, I will show the resources that I have used here. I can during the meeting as well, during this webinar session, you're going to see I pretty much use only two, but they are great additions because it will help you to speed up the process. And also I have a comparison between how can you make a request using the normal SharePoint REST API, and also how can you use these tools to basically build that quickly. So what is SharePoint Framework? So SharePoint Framework is a client-side development framework. And the main idea of all of these is to use the new technologies. The most used one, I believe, it's React. So with that, you can then access to multiple nodes and all of that. And that's great because it will help you to build applications faster. And also one of the greatest points is it's compatible with SharePoint Online and on premises. In this particular case that we are speaking today, it's only available for SharePoint Online because the SharePoint on premises only work with previous versions of SharePoint Framework. Therefore, it will not work on the particular instances. Maybe in the future, they also will add this into the SharePoint on premises, and then you can also explore this particular way of development. So which options do we have then now for SharePoint framework? And in my opinion, they should probably rename this because at some stage we just had where we have like here web part extensions and app pages. We just have that when all of this started, and obviously because Microsoft Office 365 is a subscription that you have that is kept always evolving it into something different and new. We had a bunch of different services into this role of SharePoint framework. And as you can see, for instance, Microsoft Viva, it's here with the cards. And also with that, you also have the availability to use web parts and extensions. At some stage, they also include Teams. So basically everything that you build on SharePoint, you can import that into Teams, either by personal apps, meeting apps, message extensions, and also you can use that on your Outlook. There is also a possibility to do that. And eventually in the future, I believe they will include, for instance, Loop into this. And we also now have the SharePoint list, which is not here, but it also integrates with Microsoft lists and SharePoint and Teams and all of that, which is great because it will help you not only to develop for one particular service, but for a multiple of them. One of the great functionalities that we have by using SharePoint Framework instead of a regular web application that we built from scratch is we have all the part of the authentication already built in. As you can see here on the bottom, these are pretty much the biggest advantages of using SharePoint Framework. Here, this SSO, which is single sign-on, is what I'm talking about. So that means everyone that signs in on Teams, for instance, you know that is authenticated user, and you don't need to build a platform for people to authenticate user password. You don't need to manage anything of that. You just need to manage, obviously, the other part where how we can get some services and so on. So the system requirements for this SharePoint framework. So we need the Node version, one of these 12, 14, or 16. You need to have a SharePoint framework bigger than 15. In my case, on my laptop, currently I have 17 installed. And you also have to have the Yeoman generator, at least version 4 plus. So what we're gonna do here on this session is creating the list, or what you need to have is a list. So you need to create a list, adding your fields, and you can also have like two lists, for instance, if you wish to. But you need at least one list. The other thing is you need to create a form customizer project. So that means you need to install the SharePoint framework that we have specified before. And after that, you're gonna have a few options that we're gonna see on this demo, where you need to select this form customizer project. Then the following step is adjust to your needs. So basically here is your hands-on code. Let's say because it is uses like normal coding, React or anything like that, you can adjust to hide certain fields, show certain fields based on some conditions that your business may want to. And with that, basically this is the third step, that one of the biggest ones. Then we have deployment, and here it's basically drag and drop into the app catalog, which is the way that Microsoft now uses to deploy all of that. In the past, it was WSPs, as you know, a bit different now. And then here we have as well one of the most important steps, which is on forms. You need to run some scripts, PowerShell scripts, in order to activate this particular form when you are in edit mode, add mode, or view mode. We have these three different functionalities when we are working with these particular forms, and obviously we'll cover these in my particular demo. I'll show you a piece of code as well here on the slides. I use PNP PowerShell. All of you know it's quick, pretty easy to do, and it's actually very interesting to have the PNP PowerShell integrated with this. So the important notes, we have these three different types, as I mentioned: view mode, edit mode, and new. And these will be the codes that basically these platforms use. So we're gonna see on URL when we go observe the application that we can specify, okay, I want the number 4 view. So number 4 will, I think it's called page component. You're gonna see this number 4, and you know immediately that is a view mode of an item. Then you have the edit mode, which is the number 6, and you also have the new, which is the number 8. Because the way the deployment works here, and this is an important note as well, the way that the deployment works, you can specify, okay, I want to have for the new a form with, let's say, less fields, because you need to show the status on the edit form or on the view form, for instance, and not when they are creating new. So because it's going to be a new entry on a simple form. That means you can pretty much create a second version of this particular form. And on that second version is where you're going to trigger the different, you're going to just trigger this new form that we just created for the view and edit. And for the new, it's going to be a different form. So we have this flexibility, which can be also great for you to to adjust your forms based on your needs. And for instance, as well, in case that some feature is required for your business to get done, you can also start by doing on one of the particular views, or show that information on one of the particular views, and pretty much mismatch that, and also deploy that in the future. So basically, here is a part of deployment that we're going to speak later. Here, these props are we also have the flexibility to have your own properties. In my case, because I thought it would be interesting to show SharePoint Framework and Graph, I put here some Teams integration. Basically, we're going to be able to send a message to Teams, and once we click a button, it will then send a message to a particular channel that I specified here with these IDs, and I will show you as well where you can get those IDs. And the list ID is at top, pretty straightforward. Then we have this component ID, which is going to be your SharePoint Framework application ID. Here is to have the app catalog, just because it's generally when you have these forms, and in case that you're gonna just deploy them on a specific site collection. In my opinion, I think it's better to deploy that on the particular site by creating the app catalog and then deploy into this particular site. The way that the list works is they also have some connections with the content types. So in my particular case, because this is a default SharePoint library and not a document library, I need to specify the content type item, and then I will have all these settings. As you can see here, list ID, component ID, and at top, this is the content type ID that's going to be needed to trigger the add, edit, and new. And for lastly, you have these properties that's going to be shared between all of them. You have a second version of this particular PowerShell, basically where you can see here new format, client side, component ID, and display, which is the view, and the edit, which is the edit. Okay, so in case that you need to have different forms based on some conditions that you have, you can also do that using this particular PNP PowerShell. So now let's start with the demo. So I'll just close we'll just close the presentation for a second. And basically, to start all of these, what you're gonna need is first go to your particular library that you're gonna deploy your solution. I will just create here a new folder just because it will be easier for us to understand. Demo, so 1420. Sorry. Here, if you don't know this, it's also, you can just type PowerShell and it will immediately open this particular library. So what you're gonna do to start all of this is you can use Yo or Yo Microsoft / SharePoint, and basically that will trigger the Yeoman generator that will then apply certain rules to say, okay, I want the form customizer rather than a web part or an extension or something else. This generally, it's faster, probably because I'm presenting, it takes a bit longer. And what I have done as well here, and it's important to mention, I have already a project that with all the NPM packages installed. So we don't have to lose a few minutes here while this is installing the NPM packages, because it can take a while. And I also installed, as I mentioned, 2 of them. Probably all of you will know which ones, which is property panes, so PNP property control, sorry, which are built for the community, and they are a great addition for you to for instance, to use People Picker, because you don't need to rebuild that every single time. It's easier to have those imported from the PNP controls. Secondly, is PNP GS, and that one it's used to make it easier for us to make some calls to SharePoint, to add items, to get items, and all of these different components. Okay, there we go. So as you can see here, I have the version for something. I clicked already the Microsoft / SharePoint, and now it's triggering all the different settings that I need to do. So as you can see here, I need to specify the name. Generally here it will trigger the folder name, so that's why it's demo/14/20. Here it's the important part where you're going to specify, okay, what do I really want? And in our case, it's going to be extension. And then here you have this form customizer, which is an option that is only added after 1.15. That means if you have the version 1.14, you will not see this option. And what you need to do is update this your Microsoft SharePoint generator in order to get the latest version of the SharePoint framework, and then this option will be available at that stage. Here you just give the name of the form, and lastly, this is the last option where you choose which framework do you want to use, either the normal JavaScript or React, or then you can look around to see other options like Angular and all of that. And once you click all of this, it will start to install everything on your machine. Basically the simplest project that you can have. And after this, you can start to adding your nodes, your npm packages, and with that may add extra functionality into the application. So I will cancel this because I already have done this before for other projects. As you can see here, it's already deployed certain stuff. So this is the one that I want to use, okay? It's called demo, and as you can see here, this is just a simple hello world, okay? Nothing huge. We can analyze a little bit what is going on here. It's very important, and they also have here some comments for you not to delete certain stuff, and these are the two main functions that they have that they advise you not to delete, because they will need them in order to make certain actions. Here as well, one of the most important things is here on this manifest, you have here this ID, and this is the ID of your component ID. Okay, so when you are deploying with that PowerShell that I have shown to you before, you're going to use this ID in order to deploy this particular solution into the site. Okay. Okay. So with this being said, what you need to do then is installing the other two different nodes, and I will put here as well, show you on the screen. So in order to install the PNP and SharePoint and Graph, you use this option npm install, and then it will install all of that. And for the React controls, you need to use this option as well. Okay, so PNP / SPFx control React, save and extract, and that will pretty much add two new lines. If you come here to the package solution, you're going to see basically these two. So this is the graph and the SharePoint form, and then here as well you have the property pane that we're going to use to show certain items on our list. Okay. Another part that I need to mention as well is here. Generally, you have the sample text. What this means, this is the custom properties that, if you remember correctly from the previous slides, I had as a group ID and channel ID, so then I can send a message using Microsoft Graph. So going now here to the serve, which is as well one part that we're going to need to dig a little bit in. You have here a bunch of settings that you need to customize all of them in order for you to debug all of these. Okay, so in my case, I have already here two lists as well. Let me show them. So this is the one that I have used to test all of this, and we're going to have a demo. So basically, when I click here on the new, I'm going to have here, this is a simple form to schedule some work. Okay, so demo today. Okay, then you select which type of work it is. So let's say it's phone. Here you're going to have the people picker, and this people picker is the one that I have imported from the SPFx property controls, and also this one, which is basically a picker for the today's date. Okay, I will just pick here some random dates that matter. Ultimately, I also used a Fluent UI that I didn't mention, but because we are on SharePoint Framework, I assume like most of the time we're gonna use this particular item. So basically, when I create save, it will have here a new entry with the settings that I have defined. And then if I come here, you're gonna see this in edit mode. And as well, notice here at the top, not sure if you can see it, but I have here page 4. That means 4 is the edit mode, okay? If I go if I click here to edit, it's gonna be 6, okay? And if I click new, it's gonna be 8, okay? And this is a very important setting, okay? Just so you remember where you can see all of that, okay? Okay, so I have created a copy of that particular list, which is this one. And the first setting that you probably need to do when you are developing all of that is go in here to this particular serve and change all of these settings. So you're going to have this team domain that you should replace with this particular URL. Okay. So in our case, we're going to grab all of these, not all of these. It's not all of this, it's just until here. And we're going to replace all of these. This is if you want to select all of these with the Visual Studio Code, you click Control D and it will select everything for you with that particular name. And this is also a good trick for you if you never used this before. So in this one, we also have this particular list, and we do exactly the same thing. So we're going to replace sites with the name of our list. Okay, this is a pretty straightforward. As you can see here, the component ID, which is the same that we have here. And then we are ready now to serve this application and to see how that will look like. Okay, we don't need these styles. Let's put here a simple text so you can see something. Okay, delete this. Okay, one thing that is also very good about this is you can run, you have like the gulp, all the gulp tasks, right? Gulp serve, it will trigger the gulp serve and it will open this particular setting. Okay, but there is an option as well where you can pretty much gulp serve, but specifying which part of the form you want to open. Okay, so in that case, you need to write this config. Okay, and then you put which part of the form that we're gonna open. In our case, based on the current state, our best bet, because it's an empty form, is to use this one. So we just come here and we say default setting, okay, which is this one, new form. And once you do this, this will trigger everything to start installing, to run and to go into the basically to go observe. It should open something quickly, and based on this, we should be able to debug. And then is the part, if you remember correctly, I had this third option, which was, okay, now it's time for you to debug all of this and to install all of that. So this is the part where that's going to happen. So file not file, because it's still making the gulp serve on all of these. I think here I may need to remove this particular bit and just put this. Again, Control D. Generally, it's faster to make all this development, because what happens here, it's basically it will have already some files created here, so it will be faster going forward to debug all of this. So what we're gonna have on this particular form is just this simple hello world. So little our scripts, as you can see here at the top, we already have a starting point. Obviously, if you go here to the list, this one, right, and you click new, nothing will happen. The reason for that is because all of these, it's not built yet. Okay, so this is the debug part. What we gotta do now, and I think we have like 20 minutes, and maybe it's a bit too much to do all of my presentation. I can show you basically what I have already done, and we can analyze through and compare between like these two different applications. Okay. So the first thing that you need to do is using here the PNP imported, import these both packages from your node, and these are for SharePoint and for Graph. And then what I did is I passed all those different components into this element, this big one. Obviously, what is recommended here, it's not to put everything under this function component, but also try to split that into different components, because it will be easier for you to manage in the long run. In my case, I was just playing around with this and see the different options. That's why it's this way. Okay. Here is the part where we have the properties, so group ID and channel ID, and these are very important for you to remember as well. And then we can come here to this particular file, which is basically doing everything. Okay. In my case, just because of the timing concerns, I loaded all the options for the drop-down options. But what you can do here is basically use the SharePoint and grab all these properties from a SharePoint list. And that's very helpful, because that way you don't need to configure this every single time. You can eventually create something called a column called key, a column text, use the title, and then item type, and that will allow you to specify all these settings. And basically now here, what I have used is React hooks. If you are familiar with that, then this is a pretty straightforward. So you create all the variables that will store these components, and basically here is where you're gonna have like one of the most important parts, where based on the type of the form, you're gonna either create a new item or update a new item, okay, depending if it's edit mode or new mode. And as if you can see here, I think if I mouse over this, or if I go here, dig into this, you can see these are numerated, where we have these different four options, okay, for edit, for view, 6 edit, and 8 new item. Basically, then here, if it's equal to new, nothing happens, else if you load the item. And I will show you as well where I use the PNP GS to load these items, and you're going to see the difference between the REST API and this one, okay? Because I think it will alert you between the differences and how faster it could be to just do that with PNP GS. Here, then it's all the UI that you have seen here. Let me just load that so you can see. So basically, it's all these text, these forms, the title, all of that. And a great addition that you can do is you can have HTML code, if you are more familiar with that, and build all of these, okay? This state picker is the one that is provided by the PNP control planes. As you can see here, controls React. These are just the enumerators that I imported here. And then lastly is the simple buttons, okay? Let's go here now to the part where we load our items. So basically, as you can see, I just have a simple line. It seems simple because PNP.js helped a lot to make these look simple, okay? What I have here is basically on this particular list name, and I will show you where you can get this. You update this item. This item is a model that I created using basically what I have on the list. Okay.
Hi, David.
Yes.
Sorry, there's just a question in here. So someone is asking how to add attachment control in all forms.
That's a great question. I didn't went into that, but the attachment controls, I believe we're gonna have something similar to that in the PNP property controls. And then here, it should be the same thing as adding an attachment on the PNP.js. it should be relatively straightforward, I suppose. I can dig into that. If that person wants to send me a message on Twitter, that could be like an interesting thing to get done, for sure. I didn't think about that part of the attachments. Thank you for the question. Here, basically for this create item, I also have here a version of the create item. As you can see, I just use this particular line. And here I'm gonna have to know the UI, the URL of that. And then I also need to configure the headers and then the body. While here, I just send an add and the item that I want to add, and it will do pretty much everything and handle all the requests, getting all the e tags and all of that. Because here I would need to manage like everything. That's why it's better to use, that's not why, but that's one of the reasons I use PNP.js, because in my opinion, it's a lot easier to do certain things. And the same applies to this particular option, which is send the message. Again, these properties are passed through the properties of the form. And then here at the bottom, you just get the group ID, the channel ID, and then you send the message. This could be customized. You can put anything else other than hello. We can make welcome, and then you can deploy this application once more, so you can see basically how the update will work. Okay. Okay, saved. Now, after this and building all of that, obviously this part of the code and handling these clicks, you're gonna have the web part finalized. And what you need to do is basically these two simple commands that everyone knows about, which are the gold bundle chip and then as well the package solution. Okay, I will do these both so we can see basically this particular, so we can redeploy the application. So we can see that part that says welcome to SPS. And with that, we're going to be able to see that the application has been updated, for instance, in our case. The other thing that I want to show you as well is this deployment part. I spoke a bit about this, but this is pretty much the list ID where you can get that. That's very important to know as well. So in our case, assuming we are using this one, what you do is you come here to list settings, and then here at the top, you have the value here, okay? It's between this percentage 7b and percentage 7d, okay? You get this value, and that value is your list ID, okay? And with that, you're gonna be able to install that on the list, okay? That's why if you come here to this particular one, where you have the component already installed, list settings, if you come here, you can see again 0e something, right? Which is exactly what I have there, okay? It's getting going. And then here the component ID, as I mentioned, you have two ways to get that. Either you come not here on the serve and you have this component ID here, or you can come to this part that says form customizer, okay? And here you have as well this option, okay? Pretty straightforward. Now, as well, the PowerShell, it should be just running through this. In my case, I don't need to run this once more because I already have done that. But basically here it will connect, create the app catalog. If already exists, it will throw an error, but you can ignore it. And then we'll get the content type. And this is very important to get the content type. Otherwise, you will not be able to install basically the form into your app catalog, okay? So if you come here, demo test, I didn't open this. Okay, this is basically a simple update process. There is nothing going on here special. So if I come here now, I should put a version there just so you can know. But basically, if you come here to this particular one and you send a message, it should then display here on this particular form that I have here. Okay, hello SPC. I also have, you can also do that and also going a bit further forward and add this particular item into as a list, and then on the list it will pretty much have the same functionality on SharePoint. And if you do that as well on the Microsoft Lists app that is available for desktop, I'm sure that the same will happen. What this means, it means that you can customize the form not only for your SharePoint, but as well for your Teams, for your Microsoft Lists, pretty much any services that can use the SharePoint framework. And this is valid also for the edit. Okay, if I click here on this one, I can edit for something else. I need the buttons here save, which are not here. But once, if they were here, we can then save and get this done. Important part, how can you extract those two values from the list as well? You come here, you copy this URL. Let me close this, so that doesn't create confusion. And then here, you're gonna have the group ID, which is this one, okay? And then you can delete all of that, so it doesn't create confusion. And then for the channel ID, it's this one. Here you have this %3, which you need to replace. But what you can try to do is, there was something else that you can do. Yeah, it's here. If you see here, they don't have a that weird at the end. As you see here, the at, and also the points is transformed with something else. That's why we have these %3 and 40. Okay, so you can go with that route because definitely it's going to be easier for you to get those values. So after everything is installed, then you can pretty much do this. I speed up a little bit because I think we're gonna have time to build this entire application using the different components, but I recognize at the middle that was a bit too ambitious, to be honest. But I think that's it in general, how you can use this SharePoint framework customized forms into the forms itself, and how can leverage all of that. And you have a lot of benefits with that, because you don't have to build everything from the scratch, and you already have a lot of components. I strongly recommend you to go to the React controls on PNP and also the PNP.js, because they will help a lot for you to speed up all of that. Okay. I don't know if there is any more questions. Let me swap these again. I think I clicked something wrong. Where did I click? Okay. Again. Okay. So now it's the part of the questions. I don't know if there is any more questions there for me, but that one of the particular one that you spoke about, attachments, that's definitely a good one. And the way it should work, it should manage, basically I think when you submit all of the form, you should include the attachments at the end of the. So first you create the item, then basically SharePoint, it will give you back an ID, and then on that particular ID you add the attachment. I think that's the way it should be working. But definitely a good question. And I think for the attachments, I'm quite sure that you have a PNP control that you can drag and drop and get stuff into there. One part as well that I spoke about, that because it's so much flexible, you can have these properties to have, for instance, a library, a SharePoint library, and then read that library and display items based on that. Okay, so there is a lot of flexibility that you can do. And for instance, one good example not that I'm thinking of, is you have an item, right? So you create a new item. When it's on a new form, you don't show that control because it's new, and you know that you're not going to have an attachment or anything like that. But after you have that new, when you click on the item on the view mode and edit mode, then you can display that attachment control so you can add stuff. What you can do as well here with SharePoint Framework that I didn't specify here is you have the Azure, and you can use as well Azure to some services to connect to Azure Function. For instance, in case that you have some business application that you need to read something where reading something from, you can also do that. So I don't know, because I don't see any questions.
There's just one question in here,
Yes.
David. So someone
Yeah.
is asking, what is the benefit of using SPFx versus Power Apps to customize forms?
In my opinion, there are like a few advantages. First, not only when you are doing the Power Automate, you are a bit locked in terms of design, okay? And when you are using SharePoint Framework, you have a lot more flexibility in terms of design. Other functionality that I think it's also better is you can connect to any service without relying on premium connectors, okay? Because most of the times when you go to Power Apps in particular, you have to rely on SharePoint lists, so you don't pay an extra service of the premium service pretty much. And with SharePoint Framework, you can make those connections by yourself and avoid those costs. And obviously, that part of the costs it's very important for most companies. I think that's like the two big advantages that I can see immediately. Another one could be like after you starting all of these, okay, you can create some kind of generator to pre-generate your forms. What that means, it's basically you have a form with some settings, and you can, every time that you create a new form, it will inherit all the controls, all the assets that you have done before. And that will help as well to getting things started. Because on Power Apps, when you start pretty much always from scratch. Obviously, you can have the ideas and pick up some controls here and there. But that's as well an option that I think you can consider.
Brilliant. Thanks a million, David. And then there's just another question in here,
Yes.
and someone wants to know, are there any specific skills or technologies that developers should have experience with before diving into SPFX development for SharePoint forms?
I think it would be helpful if they have some knowledge about any particular JavaScript library, like React, Angular, or something like that, in my opinion. Obviously, you can learn as you go, but have already some hands-on that can be helpful. But SharePoint Framework, I think it's pretty intuitive, and you don't need to rely on getting like the authentication part and all of that, which I think, in my opinion, it's the most difficult and challenging one to get your head around. Because when you are inside SharePoint, basically Microsoft is doing all the authentication part for you. So, in my opinion, I think it's very you should, if you are learning from the scratch, I would start to say, okay, learn a bit of JavaScript. You don't need too much, but learn a little bit, and then I would try to create some project with React hooks, because I think are the most intuitive ones if you compare with class components. And for that as well, it's not here, but what you can search for is SharePoint Framework SPFx web part sample. I know this is web parts and we are speaking about forms, okay? But if you go on web parts, you're gonna have a lot of samples, and you can see basically what people do in terms of coding and how they create these components. Because even though the language that you're programming on could be a bit different from one person to another, most of them will follow almost the same patterns in terms of folders and all of that. And that's what's really important. And you are trying to make an application that's going to scale big into the future.
Okay, David.
Yeah.
So another question, someone is asking, can we add rating controls and how?
Rating controls. You mean like, let's say 1 to 10, like rate controls? As long as they exist, I would say as long as they exist on NPM as a node package, you can do that. Obviously, then you need to translate that into a SharePoint list. Okay, so that's going to be either like a simple text, and then what you do is basically you read that value of simple text, and then you show on your control based on that simple text. Okay, let's say go for 0 to 100, right? So your ranking is 15. You put here as simple text, and then on your control, you show as basically it has 50 value on that control, if it's like a slider or something like that.
Brilliant, thanks again. So just one or two other questions. Someone is wondering if you could please start with end user use case and then how it's done with code.
Okay. Is that how you can start with a use case for this? Is that the question?
Yeah, they're just asking, please start with end user use case view and then how it's done with code.
Yeah, well, our use case, our view, it was this one, okay? So in our case, and you need to remember, so our view of the form is this one, okay? So basically what you have here is a title, and the title could be like a description of day of work, to be like Monday or something, you know? And then here is a type of work that we're gonna do for this particular schedule. This basically this schedule. What I thought at the time was, okay, let's have some kind of calendar group where people go and insert where they're gonna work for the day. Okay, so let's assume today, right? So 10 from 8 to 7:16 of the 10 as well. I'm gonna work with triage. Okay, and then you specify, okay, these are certain nodes that I need to have. Okay, that was my thought process to create this particular example. Obviously, any form that you can have with Power Apps or Power Automate or Power Apps, I mean, you can have that on SharePoint. And the idea here is all the forms that you have done something on Power Apps, you also have flexibility nowadays to do that on SharePoint. How that can help you? It's basically it's going to be like more integrated with SharePoint rather than going on Power Apps, and that's it will not be probably they will be better looking than the Power Apps because the way that SharePoint Frameworks works, and they use Fluent UI rather than whatever Power Apps uses. That's the main objective. So the question is, my example is for the schedule. And here it's just to demonstrate how can you basically use SharePoint Framework and how can you start.
Thanks, David. So there's another question here, and someone is asking, what would be a better practice to collaborate on the development of functions and maintenance of codes among a team of developers, comparing SPFx to Power Apps forms? Are there any do's and don'ts from your experience?
I would say it's a lot better to have a SharePoint Framework solution to collaborate with others than Power Apps. The reason for that is at the moment on Power Apps, you don't have a way to basically for two people to be programming on a Power App, and all the code is built in the buttons and all the different stuff. While here on SharePoint Framework, everything will be listed like a book. Okay. And as well with SharePoint Framework, you can integrate DevOps, for instance. And with DevOps, you're going to be able to manage like your team. And then it's a matter of, okay, pull requests, accept pull requests, and go on. I would say, like, from my experience, there are three. You should always have at least three different staging: dev, master, dev, prod, and UAT. And then it's a matter of, okay, pushing. You are working on development. You do your own branch. You push that branch to dev. If it's agreed and everything is working on dev, then you push UAT for the test people, test the application. If everything is fine, then you can push the production. And with this flow, you should be able to work, I would say, with any team.
Brilliant. Thanks again. So there's just 2 questions left, and
Yes.
someone else wants to know, can we restrict access to specific people?
Yeah, we have here all the flexibility that you have on SharePoint itself. So this will rely what you have here on the site permissions. So as long as you configure them in a way that you want, yes, you can do that. You can specify the permissions, and you can also display or not controls based on those permissions.
Brilliant. And then the last question here is, someone wants to know, could you share the code of schedule form solution?
Yes, I can create a GitHub repo and put all the code that I have here into there, and I can then I can send a mail to you for the SPC persons, and then they can have that into the blog post they will do with this webinar.
Brilliant. So that wraps up the questions. So we just want to say a huge thanks on behalf of the ESPC community, David, for carrying out this presentation today and
Thank
for
you as
your
well for your
demos.
time. Thank you as well for inviting me.
Oh, it was our pleasure to have you. So that is the end of today's webinar. You can find this webinar and more at sharepointeurope.com/resource center. That is it for today, folks. Thanks again to everyone for joining us today. Take care, and we hope that you'll join us again for more learning. Bye for now.